Good morning, SVS. Don't mind Reagan down in the corner, just stretching her jaw and her mouth muscles, whatever. Maybe we should do some jaw stretching together. Roll out the shoulders, wake up a little bit. Happy Monday morning. It's good to have you all. You notice a beautiful face joining us today that maybe has not been on your camera screen before. I've gotten to see this beautiful face on camera before, and we're going to introduce her in just a second. But first, I wanted to revisit last week and then kind of smooth our way into this week because they do tie together. So last week, we had another beautiful face on with dimples. Remember her? Jenna with beautiful dimples. And Jenna got to share her story about handling disappointment, handling interruption, or a completely change of plans just out of the blue. And what do we do when plans get completely either pulled out or changed or interrupted? I felt like Jenna had so much wisdom and grace in her process. And that's what I loved about her story too, is she described it as a process. It wasn't this easy, like, well, I chose the faith road after that. And, that's what we'd like to say, but she really kind of had to work into that choice. And I love that about her story and her willingness to share her story in process. So this week, we want to kind of move that and talk about all of us are going to deal with unplanned things, or all of us are going to deal with interruptions, or maybe even the disappointment of not seeing something come to pass. Either way, they carry an equal burden in our heart that we either see something we didn't expect, or we don't see something that we wanted to expect. And they can rock our faith either way. And as we move into today's topic, we're going to take it even a little deeper and a little bit more raw, because it's the unexpected tragedy, the not just a heartbreak of, shoot, it's raining on my birthday that I was scheduled in the park. Like, that's frustrating, but it's not the unexpected tragedy that just hits you with a deep blow and kind of leaves you without breath. My guess is that the majority of women that we have on this morning, which Reagan is going to be talking to you as we all talk here. So please feel free to talk to us and share your heart as Brooke is sharing hers. I'm sure there's going to be things that she shares that are going to be like, oh, that's me. That's how I felt. I am guessing that the majority of women listening here, maybe it wasn't like one incident that was massive tragedy or crisis. Maybe it was over years of time, something was happen, or something that somebody did to you, or maybe that you had to live with even as a child. It wasn't your choice. It was just in your environment. Maybe it was a choice by somebody later, like an unexpected divorce, like somebody just decided they were done and we're moving on to something else. So it could be an event, it could be a series of events, but I'm guessing most of us could say, yeah, we've had some low blows and it's a little difficult. And maybe little difficult is kind of even smoothing it over. Let's just say it's extremely difficult to bounce back. And as women who believe, there's almost a guilt and a weight that we may feel. So I'm guessing, girls, this is going to kind of hit us in. And I hate to just jump in deep, but this is a big one and it's a great story. And I think that you're going to leave encouraged today. So Brooke is the beautiful face that you see. And I knew Brooke from high school, but we really didn't. After high school, we really didn't talk for lots and lots of years. We got reconnected about a year and a half ago, maybe. And I've gotten the privilege of hearing her story and getting to know her in a way that I never knew her before. And she shared with me her story. It was probably, 6 months ago, Brooke, that you wrote out your story for the first time. And she shared it with me. And wow, I was really, really blown away at your story. Not just because you've survived something, but of God's grace to where he's brought you now. So I've gotten to see you at the end of the story, which isn't always the case. So Brooke, tell us just kind of the basics first.
Yeah.
What about you? Who do you live with? What do you do?
I live in Lewiston, Idaho, where Jamie went to high school. I'm still
here.
I have been married to my husband, Ron, for it'll be 19 years in July.
Wow.
We have, we have 2 little girls. Alana is 12 and Abby Jill is 8. And we have a dog named Piper that drives us crazy, but we love her. Just kind of a, typical busy life. I'm a RN at Public Health here in Lewiston, and just living life with all the chaos sometimes.
Yeah. So you is Piper, you said, is a girl dog?
Yes.
I showed your dog to Liam last night because he wanted to be a brown dog, not a black dog. Our dog's black, and he plays pretend. And I said, "What kind of dog are you?" He says, "I'm a brown dog." And so he wanted to see a picture of a brown dog, and so I thought of your dog. She's really cute. We like her.
Cute.
Yep, we looked at Piper last night. Totally stalked your Facebook. Yeah. So something else that's really cool, Brooke, is that you and your husband earlier in your marriage went to Mexico and lived in Mexico for a while. So start us there. Tell us about how you got to Mexico and start that story.
All right.
there.
Yeah. So after high school, I went to Canada to attend a Bible college, and that's actually where I stereotypically met my husband. But I was a missions major, basically, and he was a music major, but we both had a heart for other cultures and missions in general. So part of my graduation requirements was that I do an internship on the missions field. So through one of the churches up in Canada, we found out about an orphanage in Mexico. And it wasn't really where I wanted to go. I felt like people just kind of went down there to build like walls around garbage cans. And why would I want to do that? I didn't really see the purpose. But honestly, it all worked out for us to go down there, and it just made sense. So we went down for 4 months. Loved it. Just really felt like God was calling us there. And 2 days after we graduated from Bible college, we moved back down with a 2-year commitment that turned into 6 years. So
yeah. Wow. Okay. So you went for how long in the middle of college?
4 months.
4 months, came back, graduated, and you're like, we're going back.
Yeah. 2 days later.
Your heart was obviously attached there. Okay.
Yeah.
So you go back after college, and how long have you been married now at that point?
3 years, 2 years, somewhere in there.
Okay. So you go down newlyweds to the mission fields. Okay. So tell us now, and start your story, Brooke. Tell us now how you met your sweet boy.
Okay. Well, we arrived and we're setting up our camper, which is where they put all short-term missionaries. It was like I think it was a 1940s Airstream, so it was really, really cool. But we were unpacking, and we had a knock on our door, and it was one of the girls that had met the summer before during that 4 months. And she had this little 6-month-old baby in her arms, and she was just there to say hi and welcome us back. And I could tell she was very, very tired. And she had explained to me that she had been taking care of this cute little guy named Alvaro for several nights because the orphanage nursery was under some renovations. And so Ron and I, just because we were just, like geared up and ready to serve, we offered to take care of him for the night if she needed a little rest. And she ended up leaving him with us. And that's where it all started.
Yeah.
That boy, I would say probably from the get-go, just stole our hearts. And we just had this awesome connection with him. And, it's so funny because most of the time people didn't realize that he wasn't ours because he looked a lot like my husband. Ron's Hispanic, and he just had the same look about him, those big brown eyes.
A baby face.
Yeah, he was adorable. But, that one night pretty much turned into every night. We got permission for most nights for Alvaro just to stay with us in our camper and take care of him and watch him grow. Something that was pretty sweet was through the work that I was doing. I was in the outreach department through the orphanage. So we'd go out to the migrant camps and into the community and just do all sorts of teaching. And part of that was visiting women who were just on the wrong path, whether it was drugs or prostitution. And one of the Mexican ladies I worked with said, "Hey, did you know that we visit Alvaro's mom?" And I was just like, wow, I would really love to get to know her. And so we did go visit her, and her and I just had an immediate connection. I just appreciated her innocence. She did have a long history of prostitution and drugs. and several children, not just Alvaro, that she kind of shuffled to different homes because she couldn't take care of them. Alvaro kind of has a long story. She made a big mistake and sold him when he was born to a couple in Tijuana, who eventually he got sick and ended up in the hospital, and that's how the fact that they weren't his real parents came out. And so the government, CPS, kind of came in and took him and put him in the orphanage close to where his mom was. So we got to know her. Her name was Gabby, really, really well through visiting. She would pop in and say hi to my husband and I and just joke. She just had the biggest smile and just that innocence. You know, she'd been through so many hard things, but I don't know if it was all the drugs and everything that kind of made her that way, but she just loved people. And, you know, it could be a really long story, so I'm going to kind of fast forward a bit, but my husband and I really felt strongly about Alvaro, and we're really feeling like God was nudging in our hearts that we needed to try to adopt him. Being placed back in his home just wasn't an option because of how things started for him. And long story short, one day, Gabby, I was talking to her and I said, would you ever think about like letting Alvaro be adopted? And she looked at me and she goes, no, I can't do that because my brother-in-law and his wife tricked me into signing papers for my oldest son, and I won't ever do that again. I don't like that. And then she looked at me, she goes, it was so odd. She just looked at me this strangely and she goes, unless it was you. And I just remember, like, you know, all the hairs on my body were standing up, and I was like, Gabby, it is me. Ron and I would love to adopt Alvaro. And she immediately started to cry, and she was like, you are his parents. You've been his parents. He knows you as mom and dad. So of course, you know, I'll do everything in my power to tell them that I want him to go with you. So that started, a long process. Mexico's not the best country to adopt from. There's lots of red tape and corruption. And so lots of meetings with Gabby and the CPS, and her trying to make it very clear to them that the only people that she would want Alvaro to go to would be her. But they also had to tell her that she had to prove that she's capable of making that decision because of the life that she was living. So Gabby underwent a really long process of getting clean, going to several rehabs. She worked really hard, you know, and all the while Alvaro was living with us, and we just cherished that boy. I mean, some people in Mexico have this idea that if it's not your child, you can't love them. It's not the same. And it was really hard for me because I was feeling like that was my baby. I mean, he was 6 months old when we started, and I would hold him and just do all those things that mamas do. You know, I didn't have my own children at the time. I think I was 21, but you know, looking at his face and his long eyelashes while he slept, and just the way his hand would hold on to mine, like that love was real and it was strong. And I knew beyond any doubt that God was making a way. It was just all lining up. And so many people were praying, and there's no way this could go wrong. You know, like we're doing what we should do. And one day we got, we heard a little knock on we were living in a duplex by then, but we had a knock on our door, and Gabby was, she was outside the door, and her eyes were big and just glowing, and she had this huge smile on her face, and she was like, I did it. In 2 weeks, they're going to allow me to go in and sign papers for him to be yours. And she was so proud of herself and so proud of her decision. And, you know, we just cherished her. It was such a beautiful relationship that we developed with her. So 2 weeks, you know, that's a big deal. We get something started. Doesn't mean it's official, but it's the biggest part done. We did have some trouble, like on Alvaro's dad's side of the family. They were very, we tried to cultivate a relationship with them, went to the grandparents' house once a week and had coffee with them. Their biggest fear was that if we had Alvaro, that he wouldn't be a part of their life anymore. As much as we tried to explain to them that we wouldn't want that for him, it was really hard. They always referred to the aunt and uncle that had his older brother, that they would probably be best but that's not what Gabby wanted. And they knew that, but it was very scary for them. Anyway, I want to say it was about a week later. My husband was a volunteer firefighter for our orphanage. They're the only ambulance in Jaws of Life within 2-hour radius of where we are at on Baja. And he got called out on a car accident, which is pretty typical. He came home pretty late at maybe like 5 a.m, and he was pretty upset. He had to talk. So I woke up and he said that there was this really bad accident, and it was like an adult woman driving a truck and probably like a 12-year-old girl that had a baby on her lap, and everybody died. And it was gnarly. He said it was really hard for him to pull the 12-year-old out of the truck. He said the body was covered by a sheet, but he could tell just by how big they were that he thought it was a 12-year-old. Mm. And so he kind of calmed down. And later that morning, we got another knock on the door, and it was one of the orphanage directors, just teary-eyed, and said, that accident that Ron went out on this morning, that was Gabby. Gabby died in the car accident. And I just, oh
my gosh.
So many things flooded because I thought my precious, innocent friend, that worked so hard to get where she wanted to be, she's gone. And that's who Ron pulled out, it just, and then like the immediate thought, like, what's going to happen with Alvaro, with his adoption. And, he's lost a mom, and in the middle of all that, we've gotten close to his sisters who were actually in the orphanage at the time too. Just thinking about just confusion, like what's going to happen. And I just remember thinking, no, God ordained this. This is going to be just fine, and we're just going to continue. And he told us, and he will follow through. And a few months passed by, and things got quiet, and we just kind of slipped back into normal life and just loving on Alvaro. At that time, by this time he was 4. So that's a lot of time that's passed. He definitely knew us as mommy, and papi is what they say down there. It's daddy in Spanish. And he was ours. And just a few months later, I was working in our clinic at the orphanage, and I got a call from the CPS people. And they said, Brooke, we just need you to know that in 2 hours, Alvaro's aunt and uncle are coming, and he's being adopted by them. So we need you to get him ready. We'll be there in 2 hours. I just remember, I dropped the phone and I just started to cry. How do you tell a 4-year-old that he's going to have to go away?
Right.
And so I went and got my husband, and we cried, and we went and got Alvaro out of his preschool and went to the playground from the orphanage, and he could tell we were upset. And we told him that someone who really, really loves him, that's his aunt and uncle from Oregon, that they get to be his new family, that you get to be his mommy and daddy. And he just looked at us, how do you comprehend when you're 4? And I remember telling him, you didn't do anything to make us have you go away, but we love you. We'll always love you.
Yep.
You're a special, special boy. You get to have so many people that love you. And I know he didn't understand. It was just like, whatever, I'm going on a trip. And so we had a little bit of time to pack up his stuff. It was hard trying to pack up all his toys and the things that we knew he loved, and some clothes and some pictures of us, not knowing what would happen with them. And then they came in a van, and there was a lot of people out by that van just to say goodbye to him and to support us. And I just remember putting him in the seat and trying not to lose it and just being cheerful about it and just dying inside. But he didn't get it, and we put his stuff in the van, and as soon as I went to go close the door, I just saw this look on his face like, you're not coming with me. And it's one of those things you just don't forget, because he just immediately was, mommy, 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 and he was hitting the window and just screaming inside that van, because what were we doing? Why were we sending him away? That's probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just give you a second here, Brooke. I mean, obviously I'm like, my Liam is 4. I was telling this story to
Yes.
Eric the other day, and I just so admire you, Brooke.
Yes.
For loving like you did. Can I just say that to all of you foster moms, or even moms that have lost babies, even if you didn't lose the baby, you didn't have time with the baby that was in your belly. I mean, all of that loss, can I just say to you, like, good job, mama. You know, like, I don't know how else to like hug you and hold you and say that, but wow, I just can't imagine Liam, right? And all the time and heart and love and investment there, and the fear that he would feel with us sending him away, and the confusion of that. So, man, I think anybody listening to this story would go, and their heart could sink, and just, even if they aren't a mom, I think, you know, just human being to human being, that loss, I think is relatable. But unfortunately, that's not where your story ends, right? And so they moved to Oregon, right? You and Ron eventually moved back to the States. And I'm sure, and we'll get to this, I'm sure there was a grieving process that you guys went through, but I want to finish your story before we talk there. So Alvaro goes to Oregon, and you lost connection for how many years?
About 8.
Okay. So 8 years without him, and learning to begin again, learning to move on, learning to heal. And I say learning because it's not like there's no other way to do it. It's like we don't know how unless we walk through it, you know? So you guys had to learn a lot during that time, 8 years. And then what happened after 8 years?
Well, I was on Facebook one day, and I saw this little request thing, that little red thing pop up, and I opened it up and immediately was just bawling, and everybody in the house was like, what's going on? You know, what's wrong? And I told Ron, I said, Alvaro just friend requested me. And it was so sweet and scary. And I, of course, you know, I accepted it, but I really had to keep myself in check. Like, what do I say to this boy who probably doesn't remember a whole lot, who doesn't know all the intricacies and some of the injustice of what happened? How do I protect him?
Yeah.
And basically, he sent me something right away that said, hi, I think I remember you guys. And I said, yeah, Alvaro, we took care of you for quite a while there, and we really loved you, and I hope that you're doing well in Oregon. We thought about you so much. And, you know, at that point he was 12, you know, so what do you say? But he was just like, yeah, I remember I had fun with you. I still have your pictures. And in the process through that 8 years, we had spoke quite a bit with his sisters, and they always said that when he would come down to visit them, that they always told him, you remember Ron and Brooke? They loved you. Because they felt pretty bad about that whole thing. They knew what happened, and they would remind him, like, those pictures that you had, those people loved you so much. You know, and his older brother Jose, that was that they adopted too, would tell the girls, oh gosh, he protects those pictures, he doesn't let anybody touch them. So that always kind of made my heart feel good, at least during that separation. But it was very nice to be able to kind of see how he was doing, that he was cared for and loved and just thriving, from what I can tell, you know, from social media and following him on Instagram and stuff. Just, it really did bring some joy to our hearts, and kind of start some healing.
Mm-hmm.
So about a year there of just kind of getting to know him a little bit through Facebook and not a whole lot of contact, just because I don't know what the boundaries are at that point, you know. But I was on, we're going to go there.
Yeah.
I was on Facebook one day, and it was right before I had a night shift at the hospital. I was getting ready, and something popped up from his older sister that was just going on and on about how much she loves her brother and how great he is, and a picture of him. And at the very end, it said, R.I.P. Alvaro. And I remember just thinking, that doesn't make any sense. Why is she doing that? That's so stupid. Like, you don't joke like that. And then immediately my heart sunk, like, why would she joke like that, you know? And so I wasn't really seeing any answers. Nobody was active on Facebook as far as his sisters and stuff, or people that would know anything. And then all of a sudden, a message popped up and said, Brooke, I don't know if anybody's reached you, but it was a girl from the orphanage that we worked with. But Alvaro died today. And I just remember thinking, it had to have been like an accident or like a car accident. How does a 12-year-old die? Like, did he get hit? Just something fluke, right? And she told me she didn't know what happened. And I saw that his sister popped up on there, one of the younger sisters. And I just said, Gloria, what happened to Alvaro? And this was all in Spanish, but she just wrote back and said he hung himself. Nobody wants their little boy to die.
No.
But to know that it was a purposeful thing.
Yeah.
For at that time, a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Just not understand.
Okay.
I just remember thinking, God, you brought him back. And I was working so hard towards finding that healing, because there was 8 years that I really pushed God away because it hurt so bad.
Yeah.
And here you brought him back to me, and now you take him away again.
Yeah.
And it was so gut-wrenching to know and to be so far away from it all. And I really just kind of stuffed it. My husband was quiet like he was with the first time that we lost him, and I just felt like, Brooke, you got to get over this. You just need to get over it. Nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody understands the connection you had with him, especially people up here who didn't see us with him.
Yeah.
They don't get it. You just don't talk about it. It's nobody wants to hear. So I stuffed it for about 6 months. And then the turning point for me, I don't know if this is where you want to go, Jamie, but the turning point for me is a little odd. One of my friends from work found her 17-year-old daughter who killed herself also. And that day we were at a friend's house with her, my friend that lost her daughter, and seeing her lament and wail and cry, it just opened it up.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
At one point she grabbed my hand and squeezed and looked at me, and I knew she was saying, I get it, and giving me that permission. And that really, that turned things for me, because it gave me permission to grieve him.
Yes.
That it's okay to grieve him, and it's okay to talk about it. It really just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off and exposed all the raw and the feelings that I was having towards God.
Yes.
And in my relationship with him. And really soon after that, I was seeing that I was not thriving, that I was just kind of walking in a fog and going through the motions, and the desire to thrive again started to kind of sprout up. And that's kind of right pretty close to when I met again Jamie, but reconnected with her. When I was preparing for this, I was really noticing how long that process has kind of been working and breaking down in my heart to find a path towards healing in my relationship with God, and grieving and being okay with Alvaro being gone. It just affects so many aspects of your life, you know, your marriage, your relationship with God, how you feel about loss, the way you parent. And that realization has just really been there for a couple of years now, and me working towards, you know what, I want to thrive. God wants me to thrive, and I'm ready to let him back. You know, I felt like during that whole time I kept God kind of in arm's length. Like, I love you and I know you love me, but I can't trust you. I can't trust you with those hopes and those dreams, because I did once, and it hurt really, really bad. And I felt him there all those years, just trying to nudge, and I would just push away again. I love you, but you need to stay right there. And he's so gentle and so patient with us. Yeah. I mean, I did that for like close to 9 years of just him waiting so desperately for me to say, you know what, God, you could only change me. You're the only one that can heal me. He just waited and waited and waited, because that's what he does, because he loves us so much. And we can't explain away why these things happen. I don't understand the Alvaro story to this day, but I know that there's a seed of beautiful in there. Because there's so much that grew me, prepared me to be a mom. I can really feel like I can empathize with people that have lost children or have some hopes and dreams that were crushed. It took a long time to kind of get there, but you know, one of Jamie's questions was, what have been my daily steps towards healing? And I mean, I think if anything, this is a good example that stuff doesn't always happen overnight, and it's awesome when it does. But a lot of times there's years, and there's tiny little steps towards just letting that healing come in and change you. I think one of the biggest things was transparency with the people closest to me. Being okay with sharing. That's only been in the last maybe 8 months or so that I've realized that this is a story that I need to share, that is worth sharing, that I can't tell myself anymore, just don't talk about it, nobody wants to hear. So being transparent with those that are around me that I know will support me and not try to fix it.
Can I just say this? I was just going to say, Brooke, because one thing that you said that stood out to me is that in other words, you felt super alone. Tragedy left you feeling super alone, but you were married. You have family, you've got a mom, you've got friends, but you felt super alone. And I think that's a really common factor in tragedy, is that you feel alone. Nobody gets it. Everybody's going to work, doing their thing. Life is moving so fast out and around you. And so you felt like, gosh, nobody's going to understand the depth of my pain. But on the other side of that, you sharing your story now is helping someone today go, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Maybe they don't have your story, but you said it. I can relate to somebody who's lost hopes and dreams, right? Who's broken. And I said yesterday in the post of the reminder for Coffee Talk of, how do you describe that place where you lay in a fetal position, or that you're crying so uncontrollably that you've never heard yourself as an adult cry like that before? What do you do with those places? And it's in a very alone place, but you sharing your story and the exact point that you said, the transparency began healing, like you connecting to your friend in her pain and her connecting to you opened this pathway and opened up this place to begin healing. So I love that you pointed that out in initially in your story, maybe for 8 or 9 years, that there was alone feelings. Let me ask you this, Brooke, because you said it, your husband was quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So you had 8 years before you connected with him. And then a year later, you totally lose him. And then you've had some years after that. So you've got this, I don't know, 10, 11, 12-year process. What has it been like in your marriage? What's the process been like in your marriage?
You know, the first time we lost Alvaro, I could tell that it hurt Ron very, very deeply as a dad and as a husband. Both times he was very, very quiet. I don't know that it's a great example, but we learned to not talk about it. And when I did talk about it, I felt like he didn't want to. And so to a degree that created quite a barrier between him and I, because that was a big part of us. Was a little boy. And I'm not like blaming him or anything.
No.
You know, they all have their own way of dealing with things. I know for sure that he felt so helpless. And that is something that has come out in the last couple of years, is watching me grieve and the bed shaking at night because I was crying and missing my boy. He didn't know how to help me, and that made me feel powerless and like a failure. And maybe he didn't try hard enough to make him part of our life. Did he believe God enough? Because Jamie, that goes back to a lot of what you talk about, that equation thinking. It'll really hurt you. That if you do A plus B, then you're gonna get the outcome. And it just doesn't work that way. You know, I remember after losing Alvaro, going out to the orchard where I used to run all the time and sitting in just a pile of dirt. It was cloudy dirt that just puffs up, and I was just covered, and I was just screaming at God. I was done. I remember telling him, I'm so upset with you because you told us, and we're down here serving you, and we're being faithful, and then you have to take that little boy away from me. I'm done with it. If this is how you work, I don't want anything to do with it. And I just remember crying and screaming and just kind of feeling empty and walking away, because I believed that if I did all the right things, then I would get what I thought was supposed to happen. So that equation thinking is definitely almost a faith killer.
How did you reconcile that then? I mean, how did you, when you're saying the equation thinking, let me just clarify, Brooke and I have had conversations in dealing with our own processes. I've shared my story with her, and obviously it's not the same kind of loss, but I had a period of time where I was dealing with loss. And so we've talked about this idea that we falsely get into on if I am this, and if I do this, God says he'll do this. And then we wrap our mind around what that is and how it looks. So when we do our part, and then on the other side of the equal sign, God's part doesn't look like we think it was going to look, then there's this massive disappointment. So that's what Brooke's talking about with the equation thinking, that we can't, faith isn't equation based. The only equation, I guess, that we could say is what we hold on to is that Jesus plus his death and resurrection equals our eternal salvation and future with him. You know, that's the only equal sign that we can really, that has to do with our part, I guess, is just believing that. So Brooke, your anger sitting in the dust pile, I think we all have our dust piles. I had a bathroom corner, and I also had a Walmart parking lot at 4 a.m. So we all have a dust pile of where we've been when we're like, I can't do it anymore, right? After your dust pile, how did you reconcile dealing with the anger that you felt toward God and toward maybe your expectations you had for him? How did you reconcile all of those feelings? Or how are you? Maybe they're not, you're still in process, but how are you reconciling that?
I think that's going to be a process for me.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much of a time span there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if anything, I'm clinging to the fact that he knows. He knows all the plans. He knows every little detail, and he knows the why. And that's not really my job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my job is to let him fix it.
Yeah.
Let him fix my heart. Let him fix my mentality. Let him grieve with me over the loss of that little boy. It's not his fault.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if that really answers your question, Jamie, but I've just been very purposeful. I think, if anything, I have, when I don't want to, when I don't want to be a part of a women's group and share, I've done it. When I don't want to open up about what's really eating at me in my small group from church, I've done it. I wrote out that story, 6 months ago. That was way harder than I thought it was going to be, because it was reliving every feeling. I feel like I just walked in that obedience that sometimes you don't want to do the things that you need to do to get better. But every little step that I took just kind of built on the next. And I know we're kind of running out of time, but there were, from the get-go, when we first lost Alvaro, I had a couple of people give me some Bible verses. Believe me, I didn't want to hear them. They didn't help me. It was just in that place where it was like, that's nice, but you're not living through this. But there were two, and they've come back to me over and over and over again in different ways. So do you mind if I go ahead and share those?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So we've all heard these. They're very typical, but they mean something to everyone different. So Jeremiah 29:11 through 14. For I know the plans I have for you. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. I will be found by you. That means there's a whole lot there. I stopped believing that God was good. And I know he is. I know he is good. But believing it and feeling it sometimes is hard. And that was hard for me to hear that verse, because the plans are good and not for disaster. Give you a hope and a future. I didn't feel any of that. That hope and that future was torn from me. Everything I dreamt for him was gone. And then for him to take his own life, all the hopes and dreams I had for him, even not as my son in my home. So, but it says, if you look for me wholeheartedly, you'll find me. And when we look for him and we find him, we find that future and that hope. We find that reason. And then the other one is Isaiah 61:3. To all who mourn in Israel, he will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. In their righteousness, they will be like great oaks that the Lord has planted for his glory. I'll say that I sat in that mourning and that despair for quite a while. But I want to point out that there is beauty in my dust cloud. There is beauty in all that pain. And we may not understand it now, because heaven's our home. We're not from here. That pain has a purpose. And if I can be thankful for it, I know that he's going to water my roots, James. And he's going to plant me like that great oak and use it for his glory. Use my story. In order for us to be made right, to be planted like a great oak, all the stuff has to be exchanged and worked on. Did you see all the exchanges in that verse? Instead of mourning, he's going to give us blessing. And instead of despair, he's going to give us festive praise and joy. But we have to do the work to get there. And that's that big oak has deep, deep roots, and the soil is just as it needs to be. It's ready to soak up. One of the things that has really been important to me over these last few months of this process is, I don't know if I remember the name of the singers, but that You Make Beautiful Things
out of dust.
It speaks so
Gunger. Yeah.
sure. So it talks about all this pain. Will I ever find my way?
Yeah.
Will I ever find all that was lost?
Yeah.
And that speaks from my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But I will, because my soil, it will be a great garden, even though nothing grew there for so long. So he does make beautiful things out of dust and out of us, and it's beautiful. And that's my story. That's my purpose.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's another question.
I think that's beautiful, Brooke. I think I love that you pointed out that initially those verses given to you, it was like Jen wrote an email yesterday that was beautiful. If you're on the friends list, she sent that about dealing with her pain and how sometimes we can get some cliche answers, not ill meaning. I mean, people trying to comfort, and it's just we're not in a place ready to receive those things. But look where you ended back to, though, that God still brought you back to what he speaks to you and to me and his word, and that those are the things that you're clinging to, but you exchanged. Like you had to let go before you could actually receive and cling, And so I love that you are bringing up those things that you're clinging to now, and you're seeing so much of it, and you're able to walk a process of exchange. Yeah. I'd like Cece to end us here, if you would, Cece.
Yeah.
Because you said several things. I didn't know if God was good. I kind of stopped believing that. How could he allow something like this? But then you would say, but I knew he was patient and gentle and waiting for me and loved us so much. Like you knew those things about him. You just weren't feeling it in the moment, right? I know Cece was sharing with me that because we carry this topic through the week, you guys, and we could really sit here and discuss this a little bit more, because we know we're kind of ripping some Band-Aids here. We're kind of opening up some things here. But Cece was sharing with me about Jesus in the middle of all of this. What is Jesus as he's looking at Brooke in the middle of her tragedy and in the middle of her 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, his heart in the middle of this kind of process. And Cece is going to write, or did some writing on this. So I'd love for her to kind of end our time together and just share his heart.
Yeah. So, sweet Brooke, like, I just love you. So let me just say that. And I want to say that I feel like I was a collector of beauty while you were talking. I feel like your story, I felt like I was just, I cannot get Gabby out of my mind. I can't forget for a moment that she knew love before she passed. I can't forget for a minute the outcomes that did happen. The outcomes of love that happened by your actions and by your will. And that is astounding to me, what it meant for her to be loved, and for you to 4 times call her innocent in a life of prostitution. Your eyes of love for her were so beautiful. And Gabby knew that before she stood face to face before Jesus. And so did your precious son. The outcome of the love that you gave him, he knew he was loved, girl. Yeah, so I just have to say that. So I did write, and it's so great. The post is already prepped for Wednesday's devotional for She's Velvet Steel, and the title is "They Don't Get It." And you said it a few times, and that's the title of the post. And we're going to look at Matthew 26, and that's what I'll just end with now. Matthew 26. Jesus is in the garden, and his closest to him do not get it. And I write that, and I want to say today to everybody listening that Jesus knows what it means for people, the closest people to him, to not get the anguish that he was going through. He makes the request, sit here while I go over there and pray. And later his plea is so raw. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. And we know that they didn't get it because they fell asleep on three occasions. But Brooke, based on your story and my story of next to my son's bed for 18 days and not knowing if he would live, and crying in the bathroom, dark shower on the bottom, crying out to the Lord. We all have those places of dust, right? God knows that so often people don't get it because he walked it first. He walked it first, and the anguish was, as you know, so many know the story of Matthew 26, starting at 36, that capillaries broke in his system. That's the type of anguish, and that's the type of anguish, Brooke, that you shared with us today. But he was never alone, and that's what I want to end with. That it's okay that his boys didn't get it. Honestly, I don't know that anybody could have got, Brooke, what you were going to face. I know that we couldn't have fully. I know Peter, and if I had been in the garden that night with Jesus, I don't think I could have gotten the cross. He gave all the warnings there at dinner right before, but I just don't think that we can get it for each other. And that's the grace we have to give each other, because God gets it. And you described that so perfect today, that Jesus was not alone in that garden. And he had been to that garden many times before. You had been to that garden before, but that day in the garden when you lost your boy was the worst day in your garden. But you had been there before, relying on Jesus, and you've gone back to that garden to rely on Jesus. And that's what I hear in your story. And so good job going back to the garden, and good job all the beauty that your life has brought, and all the beauty in your loss. I love those verses in Isaiah 61. Love them. And so thank you for sharing. And let me just say goodbye to all of our lovely women. And we got texts all week long about your losses, and we want to hear from you. We're praying for you. We think about you every day. And we'll see you here next Monday. And just a thank you to Miss Brooke for going the distance with us. We love you dearly.
Yes,
Love you,
so
girls.
much. Love you. Okay. Goodbye.